And we're recording, so we're good?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll share this.
All right.
As well.
I call the order the city council work session for March 19th, and there's only one item on the agenda, it's the draft food cart code, so we're good.
Yeah, go ahead. What was that?
All right, I think Eric's up.
Thank you. I just want to make sure we're sharing here. There we go. Which one is it? There it is.
It's also at the bottom, right?
All right, we're ready. All right, thank you.
You know, after 3 years, we're still Zoom challenge, you know.
So we're tonight talk about potential food cart pod and a code update to allow food cart pods. Just to clarify a few things, some definitions, I think you guys are aware of this, but kind of two key terms. A mobile food unit is what it's called in the code. Shorthand is a food cart, mobile food units, food cart. Any vehicle that is self-propelled or that can be pulled or pushed down a sidewalk, street, highway, waterway on which food is prepared, processed, or converted. And the food is sold from that unit. So in this example, this is a food cart in terms that it's pulled, sell food from it. It could also be a food truck, would also be a food cart because it's self-propelled. This one's just requires another vehicle to pull it. And then a mobile food unit site in the code is shorthand food cart pod. And the way we specifically have that defined as 5 or more food carts is a food cart pod. So those are the two definitions. In our code right now, it's kind of a not very well-known code section, but we do technically allow food carts in the code right now. But it has to be associated with a brick and mortar store. So you have to have your brick and mortar store, and then the food cart has to be customary and integral. So it can't be unrelated to the brick and mortar. So like a really good example is you got a brewery and you're now have a customary and integral food cart that's associated with the brewery. That makes a lot of sense. If you have a, I don't know, a clothing store, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have a food cart pod that's customary and integral to that. So it's very limited, in limited circumstances, food carts are allowed, but it has to be associated with brick and mortar shop right now. Conditional use permit, if you want to get one of those approved, including a site plan review. So it's going through the public hearing process.
So when a business currently has a food cart come and sell lunch for the day, and it's not associated, that you're saying that's currently probably not
On
allowed.
private property and in the right of way, actually not permitted. We, we're complaint based to my knowledge. We actually did enforce one food cart recently, pretty recent, industrial zone. The owner of the food cart did actually have a flooring business within that industrial area, and then had the food cart within the parking lot. And we actually enforced that because it was clear it was going to be permanent if we didn't enforce it. But these daily, we're not going to
Ride by.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, wouldn't the old gut truck scenario of industrial areas back in the day?
Yeah, if there's abuse, it's daily. We get a lot of complaints. Of course, we'll enforce it, but we don't even know.
3-hour event kind of.
We don't know about this.
Okay.
Is there a separate section of the code that allows for like Robin Hood brings in food carts or
especially with
like
permit, of
Saturday
course.
market or something?
Of
like
course,
that?
a special event.
Special event
Food
permits.
carts are allowed as a special event permit. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So what we're talking about tonight is a code update that would allow food cart pods, so five or more, without that brick and mortar, establishment first. But there's some detail about what would be required with it. So in terms of the zones that we're proposing food cart pods to be permitted in, general commercial and retail commercial, it's the yellow and red on this map. It includes the commercial properties in Old Town. If they can actually fit everything on the site, including 5 carts, then it would be permitted in the commercial zones in Old Town. Also mainly, of course, off Highway 99 and 12th and Sherwood Road. So we talked a little bit about this in the past, underutilized parking lot, whatever shopping center it might be. In theory, a food cart pod could go in there. They could also go on a vacant site as well. They would have to demonstrate if they were going into an existing commercial center. Parking is still met, you know, but all the code standards still have to be met, but it would be a redevelopment, just like you're putting down a building and we'd go through the whole code. They could also do a greenfield development and put down a totally brand new food cart pod under this code. So right now we have it set up as a type 3 conditional use permit and a type 4 site plan review. So planning commission would review these. It does require a conditional use permit, which gives the city a lot of discretion in the code standards and what we can actually require. Minimum number of food carts within a site would be 5. I think, heard loud and clear during the previous work sessions that we wanted a permanent building associated with the site. So right now there's a requirement for either an enclosed building or a pavilion with a minimum of 1,000 square feet in size. You
How
know,
do we get to the 1,000? I thought, this went through planning commission, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think there's any examples that we were thinking of. We just wanted it to have enough presence to be, so it's
25, okay.
it's about 35 by 30
That's not that.
roughly. I think if you guys or planning commission or staff felt like, hey, this food cart pod has some, you know, it's got 10 carts, for example, we could actually require that to be larger. It's a minimum requirement.
Yeah.
Okay,
Like, how many people, I don't know, like, how many people can you sit in the square footage? I'm trying to picture it in my mind, right?
Yeah.
How many people could fit in 1,000 square feet if they were sitting at tables? Maybe 30, maybe you get like 3 tables by 3, that's if you had crammed them in there, okay?
Yeah, it's a decent size. If you want, if this moves.
75 people, then maybe.
Yeah, I mean, if this moves forward, we can bring an example of, you know, here's how this would get laid out in terms of seating and how many seats, or try and give you some examples.
I was wondering if maybe to think about this a different way is if you thought about it in the number of seats per food cart, right? So if you're proposing a site that has 10 spots for food trucks, you need, just making up a number, 4 seats per truck or something, you know, like, so you can, your building can scale based on the size of the development you're proposing.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Yeah, I think we can definitely, I mean, that's pretty easy analysis to do. One of the questions at the end here is gonna be, do you guys want to go see one of these sites? And I think that will give us much more.
I've seen many.
let's see.
But we can walk in and say, it's up to you guys, but we can walk in and say, hey, you know, this is a 3,000 square foot building. How does this feel? You know, and then you guys kind of have something to consider. So, but I think we're open to all of that. I mean, if we're not hitting the mark here, happy to.
For me, it's, I mean, the size, we'll figure out the right size. For me, it's about, I want that permanency factor. I don't want this to be.
Right.
Trucks parked on a gravel lot with some picnic tables, right? I want it to be a classy, you know, upscale kind of development that has a permanence to it.
Yeah, so it is in the code right now, hard surface, for basically the site area, parking, walkways, all that has to be asphalt or concrete per the code. So no gravel for parking and all that stuff. Once you get into the site, the code says approved hard surface by the hearing authority. But I think we agree. I think we expect a developer to try and do gravel for the most part in certain circumstances, and we push back on that, try and get a nicer surface in there. So, and then so it could be a pavilion as well. It's basically, you know, no walls on it, just to cover.
I would build it with like rolling doors, right? So in the summer, you can roll them up, in the winter, you keep them.
Yeah.
Permanent indoor restroom is required. I think that, you know, should be scaled to the size of the project as well, of course. Utilities, permanent underground connections are required for water, sewer, power.
To each truck.
They would have to meet the standards of CWS and the city. I don't know for sure. Go ahead.
The state code requires all that to be
Okay.
interconnected.
Thank you. So
You have
that,
to have drain, the drain has to go someplace connecting to the sewer system. And maybe the health code, is why, I don't know how the portable ones that are truly going door to door pass the new code. I think they're just,
Out of compliance.
yeah.
yeah, and I think it's a good point that it seems like, I haven't done a lot of research on it, but it seems like the state is regulating these more in probably a good way, you know, more permanent way.
When we have them at Robin Hood and like cruising, they're not tied into power sewer, I mean, power.
That's actually, I don't know how they're legal, but the new laws just kicked in a few years ago, so I think it's a slow thing.
Permanent basis, they do, if they're on temporary, maybe they have different, yeah.
And I don't know for sure, but I think if there's one on a site, the state's gonna see it differently than as soon as you add another one. When you're talking about your and stuff like that, so.
Yeah.
So, make sure our code is.
Start at the top of the pyramid, work the way down.
Well, yeah, whether they're individual or it's shared, it's gonna be underground, right? It's not gonna be above ground, it's not gonna be tanks, not gonna be generators, you know, things like that. Design standards, so we would apply the existing commercial building design standards for permanent structures. And then pavilions aren't really subject to that, so there'd be new or additional standards for pavilions. Again, going for high quality material permanence. Setbacks, so for the permanent structures, the setbacks of the underlying zone would apply, so general commercial, retail commercial. It's not gonna be a whole lot of setback, unless it's adjacent to a residential zone. So of course, if these go in near a residential zone, we want to be mindful of setbacks and other impacts. For the individual food carts, not for the permanent structures, there are new setbacks for that. I believe it's 5 feet from the side and from the rear and 10 feet from the front. So there's setbacks for structures, setbacks for the carts themselves. Parking, 2 vehicle stalls per food cart pod and 0.5 stalls per food cart. So every 2 minutes, we get a minimum two bike stalls.
Yep.
And
food cards, you'd have to have 20 parking spots.
minimum, yeah.
Yeah.
That seems excessive, though. Where do we get that number from?
I don't have that background. Joe, do you recall where we got that number from? Erica drafted this code. We can look into that. My hunch is that it's probably based off of other code requirements in other jurisdictions, but we can take a look and just ground that, make sure we're not over requiring.
I would say like if we had a food cart in Old Town to require 20 spots for 10 cars or 10 spots for 5 cars.
Yeah, the Old Town parking exemption would apply.
Okay.
So they would need that.
In this part of Old Town, there's no parking requirement. Other side, it's 0.65 of
So they
the.
would need. And they consider where there's 10, then they would need like 13 parking spots or something.
But on this side, no parking requirements.
Does the code process that this has to go through allow any leniency, any change to that, like,
I think we could require more.
but not less?
It'd probably be a little tougher. Well, we can do a variance. They could do a variance, but
Like if where they're putting is attached to, you know, a shopping center that, would the shopping center's parking count towards?
yes, we can
Okay.
take all that into consideration, and that's part of the larger code
Okay,
where you can share parking.
okay.
That feels about right to me, to be honest.
Well, kind of, the traffic flow that I've typically seen is more of a. We're getting at, it's a quicker meal, it's not a. Especially in Old Town, we're looking to draw traffic. Foot traffic.
Requires.
It's hard to do
Well,
these old towns are-
like we're trying to get foot traffic for the other, you know, oh, you get your meal and you walk around and see what's at Cedar and Stone. Anyway, and so, by saying, and we want you to have this massive paved area, it seems like that's.
Yeah, so for Old Town, again, this side of
Yeah.
Old Town, no parking requirement, so it could be 100%. food cart pod.
Yeah, but we don't have really that many places to do it.
The other side of the railroad tracks, it's you have to provide 0.65 of the minimum.
Okay.
And so if we have 2 stalls per food cart pod, they have to provide, it'd be just over 1 stall per food cart.
All right.
But before we bring this forward, we'll ground this, just make sure it's not totally out of line with, what other jurisdictions are doing.
Yeah,
Because I agree, we want to get it right. We don't want to over require and make projects unfeasible, but we also don't want to under require and have a parking issue. So we want to try to get it
I
right.
get that, okay.
Yeah, and I feel like if you're in Old Town, there's already lots of parking. Not required parking, if you're going into one of the retail areas, the commercial areas and along 99 or 12 Shore Road,
You're gonna need parking.
people are gonna drive to, so that you're gonna need the parking, so.
And I think when we first talked about this, really, Old Town has very, if any, few spots that this is gonna be able to.
Yeah.
fit into.
Or could be redevelopment, but.
It's gonna be tough to get it all in. On this side with no parking, you can for sure. Other side with parking is gonna depend on the site, I think.
Which is, this side makes more sense.
Wow, this is a really brief presentation. That's all I had for you. Again, I think we heard you on not wanting this to be scattered food carts all over the city in random places, and we don't want it to be a low quality pod development. We want this to be high quality. We want it to be permanent. There's plenty of examples that we're thinking of. Staff is certainly willing to, start those negotiations once an application comes in. And then planning commission would be the final decision maker on it. That's all I had. So comments on the code. My other thought is if you guys want to do a site visit, we can set that up. Totally up to you guys. And then.
I think this is really, really close to what I've been looking for. I think the only thing I'd go back to is the pavilion size or the space size. Because I'm thinking if someone wanted to do like the minimum 5 pods, like 1,000 might be too much.
I got you.
I'm thinking like I think it just gives us more flexibility if we somehow tie the size of the indoor space or the covered space to the number of pods like we do with the parking.
Do you count one solution, if it's not there, is you count
Or the number of chairs.
the square footage in the bathrooms towards the overall square footage of the pavilion.
Well, that's what I was thinking, if you just tied it to seating, right? You said you need 2 parking spots per pod, you need 4 chairs per pod or something, then it's super, and then you already have to have the bathroom requirement. So then it scales.
Yeah, I like that.
Not too bad. Was there any conversation, I think I had brought it up last time or sent it, maybe I sent an email to Cheryl about having something in our code or. So we have these mobile Kona ice and dessert something or others that aren't allowed. How we could go about allowing those, on hot summer days, they pull up in front of the art center for an hour, they suck, they're not supposed to, but.
We can. What about the police chief? So it's, it would be in a different code section.
A special PD table at the pod, is that what you're saying?
No.
Kona ice. What did it say?
Kona ice,
So-
Kona ice, the tree.
All your goodwill will go down the drain if you arrest the Kona Ice people.
And can it be so specific that it's just the summer treat?
Oh, we're talking about a separate part of it. Separate part of the code now.
I don't wanna, I can't see a taco truck like driving around and pulling up for an hour somewhere, but.
Is it possible to just say, hey, you gotta get a permit, but we only offer, 5 permits a day or something, or 3? You know what I mean? Like, is there a way we can cap that legally? Cause what I don't want is to say, hey, we have a permit process. And then you've got 50 trucks.
Yeah.
And so is there a way to just say, hey, even if they're low cost or no cost, it'd be great if there was some cost, but if we just said, yeah, but there's only, 3 a day and it's first come, first serve.
I'm working with the pod, not the individual things.
Is there what?
Is there a problem we're trying to solve here?
Just so that they're not having to be illegal, Kona Ice and the other
But if we're
one.
not enforcing it.
We're complaint driven, yeah. I
Okay,
guess until it becomes a problem.
They don't seem to stay for long. They come in, the crowd comes, and then they leave is what they're
I have
supposed to.
never received complaints on sales, basically sales, the whole prohibition, if you will, it's, we don't want a lot of sales from the right of way, right? And that'd be if people just parked outside City Hall.
Turn around and park at the, one of the squares, then, no problem, I'll give you the complaint.
Right.
But it's really not.
They pull
You
up
have
at
to have-
State Park, they pull up at
City.
Sunset Park. And the kids, everybody loves them, but they, again, they.
Or ice cream.
And if you're gonna make
So
them get
until
a
it becomes a
permit, let's go to a
problem,
different
then we
town.
won't talk about
I
it.
think
Okay.
it's a smart approach. I think it's a smart approach.
If you make them a permit, let's go to a different town, but they don't have to, and then we won't have it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's a smart approach, and I think, if we get to a point, we'd have to start getting a lot of complaints, right? It's impacting a neighborhood, it's impacting a business, then we enforce it, then they come back and say,
how come I?
can we do this? And then we start putting.
Oh, well, you're not following Oregon health, food, whatever. Yeah, most likely,
Okay, all right,
if they're cooking anything warm.
this all makes sense. to me.
Yeah.
Illegal.
Any comments on the code?
I am in favor of bringing an amendment for consideration after. all
Yeah,
this
also,
long
I support the proposal. I think it was probably for me,
You Get that on record?
only the pod, because I don't think really we'll see them even if we pass it, but.
I'll be good fun.
yeah.
Field trip?
Uh,
Push
I
that
don't
too
know.
hard.
I'll go if it fits my schedule.
I want a block from me at work. I've been
How
there
about
zero
this?
times.
How about this? If you guys are out, you say, I love this food cart pod, I love this component of the pod, send it our way,
Forest
send it to
Grove.
Joanne.
Forest
Forest
Grove, and then the one over at Wood Village, not Wood Village,
Troutdale?
Troutdale.
Happy Valley's got one, that one up by with the giant fork. I'm just gonna go do that. I'm gonna,
The giant fork?
yeah.
Westland has a good one too.
Oh, that's right, Westland's good
Lebanon
too.
one is really
I have
good.
never been to a food cart pod
What?
in my life.
Oh,
I
boy.
wanna know food cart,
Beaverton's probably the biggest one left around now that the Portland one closed.
So can I, if I
The one at City Hall,
set some expectations on the field trip?
Yes, if it's more than a quorum, we need.
We're not doing a
we
field,
need to
I don't
have-
think it's not like it's a field trip.
It could be
I ain't going
a
nowhere.
session without deliberating toward a decision. Just want to make sure we're,
We will follow all. No field trip.
Linville has one too. That's grandiose.
ain't gonna do it.
Yeah, in fact, I could almost take a picture though of the Newburgh one and say, I don't want this. Right?
There's like,
Cause theirs is just trucks and a temporary like tent.
Yeah.
They have two,
Oh, I haven't seen the other one.
yeah, they have, which one are you talking about?
The one that's like right when the roads divide and it's
Yeah,
like off to the
That's,
left.
that's the main one.
Yeah, but it's just, the last I went, I mean, it's been 6 months, but it was just a tent with trucks around it.
Now they have like a wall, well, not a wall, but yeah, like a wood wall that's up in front of it.
So I've taken visitors to the asylum one up there in Portland. Anyway, it's weird how it's a tourist destination now because it is a very Portland experience. They've got the cool welded artwork that's all part of it. And so now people ask to go, oh, let's go to the, so I feel like, again, if it's done right, it actually becomes a draw and, people come,
That's the way Forest Groves is.
Oh, yeah, I haven't been to that one.
It's not artsy like the Portland one, but it's becoming raw.
Oh, yeah, and I've seen, I've seen it all over. In fact, I was just talking to the people in Bend and they said theirs has been phenomenal. They've got several of them that have really perked up neighborhoods that are great.
so this code is gonna allow some entrepreneur, somebody with a vision to come in
Yeah.
and do what, if this is what they choose they want to do.
Yep, you're gonna need a anchor developer, if you will, but then they will be likely renting the spaces for a small food entrepreneur.
Oh,
Anything else?
Right.
All right, well,
Sounds good.
adjourn the work session in 5 minutes to regular meeting.
the